Welcome everybody to the Real Estate Deli. I'm your host Mando, Money Making Mando on IG. Again, go follow me. Welcome to another episode of Real Estate Deli, where we cut through all the noise and deliver actionable insights straight to you and make the information the star. And today we have a wonderful guest, Regan Sonnabend. Thank you, Regan, for coming on today.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
For sure. Obviously, we've connected some on the back end just to get to know each other some as well. Feeling out kind of process, right? That's kind of what you want to do when you kind of meeting new people in your community, right? And we
Yeah.
haven't really connected. You want to then reach out and build a connection before that we get on, let's say, screen and don't have really nothing to relate to. So that's kind
Yeah.
of my style. Hopefully, you enjoy the process. Again, Regan, let's get into your story. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you said you're top tier. You've done a Gator, and you're into some corporate housing, right? So let's get into some of your successes that you've encountered in the real estate sector so far.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, it's interesting because we always talk about what we do within the community, and of course, we've been in owners club together, had the chance to sit together at lunch at the retreat in Scottsdale. But among all the other things, it's like it's hard to bring it all back. So definitely, for folks who aren't familiar, Top Tier TC is part of the Sub 2 community, which truthfully, I don't want to say it's underappreciated because it's not, but the more involved you get in the community, the more deals you're involved in, the more you realize how critically important that role of a TC is in getting deals across the finish line. The percentage of deals that fall apart, period, but especially creative deals, it's really high. And that's the piece, that's the role of the Top Tier TC is knowing all the ins and outs of dealing with creative transactions and getting them across the finish line. So the interesting thing is that was how I first got started in this community. And, when I decided to join, I had been an investor for about 10 years already. I'd tried a lot of things. I'd had success, but there were some things missing. That's why I was looking for something new. But the interesting thing is, once I got into the community, I felt so welcome and embraced by the community. I actually have been so busy doing other things that I haven't really had much time to do Top Tier. So I'm actually referring those out now. And the same thing is true with Gator lending. Certainly, I have the ability to do that, but I've realized that I really want to focus more on acquisition with partners as well as the corporate housing business. So like a lot of investors, like a lot of visionaries, I've got a lot of different things going on, a lot of plates to keep spinning. So I'm thankful to say that I've had success in, different asset classes, different exit strategies, and, brought a lot of bumps and bruises with me along the way when I first joined the community. So that was maybe a little bit longer answer, but I realize there's so much to bring to that question.
Yeah, I hear that. Do you have anything off mind that you can relate to us? Like I said, a win that you feel comfortable discussing with us. I just feel like when we have successes and in whatever sector it is, it just also brings confidence to you as well, right? So I like to tap into that.
Absolutely. If I were to think about a specific win, I would focus on the corporate housing side of things, because that really is where my active time is being spent today and a lot of the day to day. And, there's future things to come along that realm. But, when I think about when I first got back into corporate housing, because I actually had first done it way back in the late 1990s. It was my day job when I was in grad school. So I had gone back into the hospitality industry after that was over. And I wasn't back into corporate housing until 2022. At that time, I had started kind of transitioning my own focus as an investor. I was still at my W-2 and decided that I wanted to be able to do something that was less active than a short-term rental that I could kind of still manage alongside a W-2 at that time. So I did get back into corporate housing, and it was pretty amazing. I mean, like immediately I started having success. I grew from one unit to, I don't know, 7 or 8 in the course of less than a year. And, I realized well, at that time I was, still working my W-2. I was still balancing it, still doing all those other things. And I don't want to say it was too easy, because nothing's ever too easy, but it really, if you lay the foundation, you do things right, you have your marketing side squared away, you have your service side squared away. I had a lot of great processes already kind of beginning at that time, but there were some processes that I still needed to refine. So it was definitely easy staying full, staying busy. And then, over the time since then, I've really continued to refine some of the processes on the back end. But, it's really encouraging to be able to add multiple units that quickly and to be able to keep them full. And, there's a lot of different strategies that people go with when they look at midterm rental or corporate housing. And part of what I was utilizing when I was getting back into the space was I was trying to cluster properties together, because inevitably what would happen is, you would have a property that was booked for the next 6 months, 9 months, whatever the case may be, and you're constantly continuing to get more leads for that property. So it's really great to be able to have another property close by that you can say, well, that one's full, but I've got this one over here. And that's how all of a sudden I started to recognize that, there really is the potential to snowball here, because if you're finding yourself placed in markets that have consistent demand, that just keeps happening again and again and again. And it's like, okay, I've got that one full, let's get another property. Got that one full, let's get another property. And it's amazing how quickly that can take place.
I love that. I just want to just simplify things. And what is exactly corporate housing for those who are not in the sector or don't understand or want to get into a sector or interested in what is it, and specifically what terms is it that you house these individuals or people from, or businesses? Is it like a short-term thing or more of a midterm? What can you just delve into that a little bit?
Sure. And, I'm glad you asked that, because it's not just the term corporate housing. You might use the term temporary housing. People don't really use that term as much today. Everyone talks about midterm rentals. There's a lot of emphasis around that, a lot of buzz around that term. And again, for someone like myself that first got started back in the late 90s, that term didn't exist. Even corporate housing, it was just called temporary housing. At that time, we were housing a lot of Y2K consultants, which, it's like after, we all think of COVID and, specific things that are those big things we remember, but it's kind of hard to remember back when Y2K was the thing that had everybody shaking in their boots. But at that time, we were staying really, really busy with that. I can tell you from firsthand experience, putting them up in housing, there were so many consultants that were out there working long hours, working 7 days a week to make sure the worst didn't happen. And of course it didn't. But in any case, when I say corporate housing, temporary housing, midterm rental, those are all really synonyms for the same thing. It's for stays that are 30 days and up, that are month to month. For us, an average stay is maybe 4 or 5 months, but we do get those 1 month stays and we do get those 12-month stays. So there's a little bit of everything. But the reason I've started finding myself adding the term temporary housing is because when you think about what's truly corporate, there's corporate relocation. That's one of the main places that we get our business today. We also get quite a bit of business from insurance displaced families, which happen all different geographies, all different times of years. Sometimes it's related to a natural disaster. Sometimes it's just an individual thing. Sometimes it's like, right here in Chicago, it's the middle of February and you get an ice storm and you're gonna have a lot of burst pipes. I actually have one of my rental properties in the south suburbs that sustained damage recently in a windstorm. So I'm dealing with an insurance claim myself right now. Fortunately, my tenants are able to stay in place, but that's not always the case. But the reason I also like layering in that term temporary housing is that I've found that we also house a lot of families that are self-pay for a variety of reasons. They've sold one house, they haven't got the other house ready yet, or they're staying in the same home, but they've got a fairly significant renovation taking place. We've even had divorces, all kinds of different situations that for one reason or another, there's a household that's in transition. And so that transition is often what will bring folks to us. We get a lot of folks moving internationally that are coming, whether it's for relocation for a job or they've just decided to be digital nomads or, whatever the case may be. But they just need that place to be able to be somewhere longer than being in a hotel, but until they can kind of get their bearings, get settled in and figure out what they want to do next. I actually have one tenant in place that moved in exactly that way. And as they were getting settled, I'm like, hey, I'm not really sure exactly what you have going on, but if you'd like to stay longer, we can transition to a long-term lease. And in that case, we did do that. So by the time it's all over, they will have been with us for a year and a half and may extend for another year. And I've had that same thing happen in other cases as well.
I love that. I have, I think, two questions.
Okay.
Is there like a vacancy, house vacancy in that space? Like, is there a downtime? Is there any seasonality? And how do you sort this type of customer, right?
Yeah. So there is seasonality. What I observe here in Chicago, and it may be different in different markets, but everyone is scrounging to keep their properties full in the hard, cold winter months,
Okay.
especially at the end of the year. And, I can only speculate. Part of it has to do with, the weather here is not that great that time of year. Of course, people aren't coming to vacation, but if you've got a family that's relocating or a project that's starting, not as many projects start that time of year. Or if someone's relocating, maybe they put it off till the end of the school year or whatever the case may be. So, there's a lot of strategy that can go into that, but there's also a lot of luck of the draw that can go into that, because I've seen it happen time and time again where, I've got a really great property, and like the last thing you want is to get a 1 or 2 month booking that comes in August, because then you realize like, oh man, it's going to get to be fall. And then as it's starting to gear up for that slow time, that's right when I'm going to be vacant. So sometimes I try to kind of take my time when deciding which placements we'll take, because the one that has the longer length of stay is always going to take precedence and be the first choice of who you would want to have in there. Because if you can, at least here in Chicago, again, seasonality is different in different markets, but if you can avoid having a property become available in November, December, January, you would like to avoid that, just because it may sit vacant longer before you're able to fill it. Otherwise, I will say, with our core inventory units, we've been very fortunate in being able to have minimal vacancy in between. In fact, I really try to avoid doing same day turns, but I've had to do it more often than I wish that we did, because, especially when someone's been there, you need a deep clean. They might have been there for months and months. You got to have one person moving out at 10 a.m. and somebody else moving in at 4 p.m. You're crossing your fingers there are no big maintenance issues. And, there was one case where I had a work crew moving out, and then a family, or not even a family, it was a husband and wife moving in, and that work crew left a lot of work for the cleaning crew. We'll leave it at that. And it was tight getting everything ready. So there's a lot of strategy that goes into the operation sides of things as well. And there are things that you can do, of course, with your pre-move-in inspections, getting ready with condition reports and things like that. Maybe trying to check in if it's been a longer stay before the vacancy happens, so that you can be prepared for how to get things turned quickly and ready for the next tenant if need be. But again, I'll consider that a blessing that we've had so many same day turns, because I know a lot of operators that have had different kinds of issues than that.
Yeah, where you were speaking, I was thinking, is there maybe like a contingency that you could put in place where, let's say, someone is leaving in a couple of days or a week, that maybe you could do a walkthrough, right, to kind of analyze what's going on, so you kind of prepped to what's going on in the property, so you know what to gauge, right? Is it a deep clean or more issues than we think, right?
Right.
So you blasted with, when the vacancy happens, oh my God, we only have 8 hours. What do we do, right? So now
Exactly.
so those are things that I guess you learn as you go as well, right? That you pivot to and adjust, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of operators do insist on either biweekly cleanings or monthly cleanings for that exact reason, so that there aren't any surprises with really long stays. What we've found is we do prefer that, but we don't insist on it. And so we have started to put measures in place to make that process easier. Again, we try to avoid same day turnovers when we can, but inevitably we find ourselves in these situations where, because everyone's in transition generally, family that's staying with us, what happens so often is we might start off with a week in between, but then it keeps getting pushed and pushed and pushed because construction's taking longer on the home they're going into, or whatever the case may be. So we do the best we can to be accommodating of the families that we're hosting, while at the same time, making sure that we can be fair and have things ready for the incoming family as well.
I love that, sharing those experiences where, say, someone who wants to delve into this space kind of understands, it has a sort of an understanding how is it to live and survive in this space and how to adjust and pivot. Now let's pivot as well. As in business, it's we talk about successes, but there's also another side to that, is right, the struggles, the ebbs and flows where people don't see, right? And that kind of is where you persevere, let's say, and be able to get over the barriers. Have you had any encounters in your real estate journey where you've struggled and you failed, that you felt like, oh my God, what do I do? How do I get out of this, right? When you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, can you delve into that some as well?
Absolutely. And, I kind of unintentionally moved into that a little bit as I was talking about that same day turnover situation. But, I really do think that systems and processes and really refining that is a big part of avoiding some of the things that we have experienced. And, we've experienced them, other operators in the space experience them. And in this space, one of the things that's unique and different about it is you're dependent on a lot of different individuals. You're dependent on the landlords or property managers that you're renting from. You're dependent on the cleaners and the inspectors and the maintenance folks, either on your team or on the team of the property in the case of apartment complexes. You're dependent on not only the family that might be coming in, but the relocation management company or whoever is, administering things on their end. There's a lot of different folks involved in these deals. And so I find that we're managing a lot of different people, a lot of different expectations, a lot of different processes, often that are different. And so, what I've learned is really being a stickler for that. And, it's not that we're trying to give anyone a hard time, but for example, just having a really good inspection report from cleaning teams. And, we've learned, like, not just all the pictures that they might give automatically just to show that the cleaning was done, but like, let's not just look at the kitchen, open up the fridge, let's see the inside of the fridge, open up the stove, let's see the inside of the stove, open up the toilet lid, all of those things so that we can see those unseen things and avoid issues. And for all of the best intentions, that doesn't always happen that way. There's always, the possibility of things being unseen. We had that happen recently at a property where a bed was made and the mattress encasement was dirty. So you're not going to see that in a photo. So we do the best we can to avoid those things, but we're also highly reliant on all the different folks that we work with, from property managers to landlords to cleaners to the relocation management companies that are handling things for the incoming families.
I love that attention to detail. They say the devil's in the detail. I say God is in the detail. Yeah, those are things that, again, I guess with some experience, that you can fall back on and say, you know what, let's do this. Let's open some cabinets. Let's check the refrigerator. Let's see the lights on, right? Or whatever it is, right? That would not really, something probably you would overlook, right? But these are things that you have to be so in detail to make the transitions even smoother, right? So there's a checklist involved, actually, right?
Oh, yeah. There's always been a checklist, but we're refining the checklist. We're adding to the checklist. We're doing the same thing even with the leases that we have in place. And we're being much more clear about service level agreements, about expectations regarding maintenance. I can think of another example at an apartment complex, which, you kind of tend to walk into things with assumptions that, if you have an A-grade apartment, that, the maintenance is going to be up to snuff and where it should be. And I can think of a case recently where it was, somewhere between an A and a B, but it was I'll call it a B class apartment. And there was a particular issue that I had to bring up again and again and again and again. And, it's incredibly frustrating when, things are not being done to the level that they should be. And so we're, learning along the way and adding more more details into our addendums that we utilize, and making sure that, because we're dependent on those people to meet our service level agreements with our clients. So yeah, definitely learning a lot of things along the way, and trying to improve the process without making a checklist that's unbearably long.
Yeah, again, a lot of stuff to be on top of. Again, once you have control of those systems, you can refine them and even delegate them out to make these transitions smoother. And you can even allow yourself some more time to be able to grow, right? So leading now, let's get into the growth period, right? What do you envision yourself? What do you forecast yourself being in the next 3 to 5 years, 7 years? Where do you see your business going, and how you're going to approach to get there? Sort of say your Mount Everest.
Wow. Yeah. There's, it's interesting because I feel like we're going a lot of places at the same time. I'm incredibly thankful that Owners Club is something that, was created and launched to help prepare us for some of the things that we needed to be able to do that a little less painfully, I guess is the way to put it, because there are so many things that you think about, as an entrepreneur, as a visionary, as a business owner, and you're like, I really want to do that. I have all of these aspirations, but figuring out all the dots along the way, there's a lot of dots that need to be connected. Yes. And then you start to recognize like the true full team that you need around you in order to be successful. And as we're both learning in Owners Club, and, really starting to set up your business in such a way that your business can operate without you. And that really forces you to get very specific with those systems. And so that's a process that we're in right now. So I'm thankful for having Owners Club to prepare us for those sorts of things, as well as a lot of the visionary type things, a lot of the, the business structure and protecting yourself, and, insurance and family offices and bookkeeping and tax prep and all those things that kind of make my head spin. But I'm thankful to have that blueprint, for some of the things that we need to do that we might have had to learn the hard way otherwise. So I will say that. But as far as where we're going, I mean, truthfully, I find my mind blown with that, because we find that we've got so many verticals that are already doing well. And thanks to a lot of what we've learned at Owners Club, or through Owners Club, we're starting to build out our team. We're actually in the process of onboarding a few different folks that will be working with us on business development, utilizing some profit sharing that I couldn't quite imagine how we would have been able to structure that given our unique business model, until I really had the benefit of working with so many different individuals through Owners Club. So that one move is massive. And as you know, the operators that are being certified through Top Tier are starting to speak to members of Owners Club. And that's another thing that we know that we desperately need, is having, a head operator, a COO eventually one day, and then, a whole stream of work that will flow under that. And so we're starting to get those dominoes set up to be able to do all those things, so that we really can scale in the way that we have the opportunity to do. For our business, for Turnkey Corporate Housing, as you know, Tigger and I partnered a few months ago. She had already been in the community for some time. I have been already operating corporate housing for some time. And by putting those things together, and, all of the partnerships and opportunities through the Sub-2 community, and through, the many properties nationwide that are owned by Sub-2 members, it really brings a lot of different things together. And so we're actually expanding on that even further. We've become a vendor for the federal government, but we're in the process right now of actually being added at an upper level from that, and being added on the GSA schedule. So that is a tremendous opportunity. And then also the certification process for being a women-owned business. So there are so many additional opportunities, contracts that will come through that. And so because of that, we're really building out the teams to support those other verticals, so that we can focus, Tigger and I can focus our emphasis on building those relationships with those government entities to best be able to utilize those new statuses.
So you mentioned something about a women's certification. Is that a grant program to accentuate the women in the space, or what is that about?
Yeah, it's not a grant program. Now, there are a lot of grant programs, and that's something that we haven't really delved into, but that's kind of part of the whole thing, right? Like there's so many opportunities out there, and, it's that whole shiny object syndrome, figuring out like, what are we going to do next? And so, it's one of the many reasons that it's so good to have partners that we work with and to be able to figure out, who's going to handle what. So, there are a lot of different types of grants out there. It's not something that we have taken advantage of to date. I can see us doing something like that in the future. But the Women-Owned Business Certification is really just something that comes into play with many businesses. They actually have a registry with many businesses, as well as state, municipal, and county governments that have requirements to give certain percentages of business to women-owned business, to small businesses, to things like that. And so it's just one more avenue for us to get, preferential treatment as a small business that's women owned. And of course, with Tigger being a veteran, we're veteran owned as well. So, we got a lot of things going in that particular arena, but having the opportunity as a small business to have some additional things that are available. And even within the government arena, the different government agencies have, it's called it's OSDBU, Office of Small Business, Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. And so there are actually people who their entire job is to help you as a small business that's a vendor for the federal government maximize the opportunity that you have. There are many of those contracts that are required to give 23% to small businesses. And so that's what we're trying to do now, is really get ourselves set up to best take advantage of those opportunities.
Wow, you really delving into that space where these opportunities lie at, that it's kind of mundane and kind of the boring stuff, right? Where
Right.
where people don't see a path or a light, but that's kind of where the work is done in those spaces to really grow, right? You really kind of, I love the way you're building out your business. I recall speaking with Tigger, and she was about one of your partnerships, which I think it was I brought us some data. I think it was a data software company, right? We like I said, I had her on my pod, and she was delving. So I was like, how do you tie all this together? How you tie all this data together? So she did bring up that you were, I guess this is one of your partnerships, which is a software data company, I believe. Can you expound on that a little?
Well, I think there are a couple of different things that are kind of on the periphery of that, but I think the one that you're talking about is DoorSpot, which is a property management software. So before Tigger and I partnered, I had been spending months trying to work smarter, not harder, because I recognized even then that I needed to have process improvement to get more done. And I'm like, I can add people, or I can add automation, or I can do a combination of those two. And so unfortunately, I went through a couple of different changes with software, each of which is a fairly major project. And so I spent months getting demos and talking to different softwares that are focused on property management, because what we found and what I was experiencing myself is that there are certain softwares out there that work really well for short-term rental, for vacation rentals. And then there's other property management software out there that's really designed for long-term rentals. But for both of them, you had to do a lot of tinkering to really make it work effectively and well for the midterm rental space. And so after months of going through different demos, I was fortunate to have a demo with DoorSpot, and was speaking, with one of the leaders of the organization, although I didn't know it at the time. And I was just kind of explaining some of those pain points, and with no expectation that, that they would develop anything to accommodate our needs. But after a few conversations, it became apparent that they recognized the value and the opportunity in the midterm rental market. And so they came to us and said, hey, let's have you act as a development partner and, lay it on us. Tell us what's your wish list. What do you need? What functionality, what user experience do you need? And so we've been meeting frequently since then. And, we're just continuing to go down the list to get that functionality added in there. And even once it gets in there, refining the user experience. And so, we have a standing, at one point we had a bi-weekly meeting. I think we moved it to monthly, but we inevitably end up having ad hoc meetings in between, or, different things things that come up, or different things that are getting checked off, the development list. And so seeing like, okay, here's a sneak peek of what's there now. So just want you to know that it's kind of hiding under the surface. So that has been a really great opportunity. Now, there are definitely some other data sources, other systems that we use, but part of the idea and really putting a lot of emphasis into that is simply the fact that you can really suffer from tool overload. You can use so many different tools for so many different things that might be integrated to varying degrees, and to be able to, as much as possible, keep things under one piece of software is tremendously helpful, especially when you're trying to scale a team quickly.
That sounds awesome. I love how you just delve into that space and be able to regurgitate all that information. So I know you're doing well in that space. You can tell by like kind of when someone speaks how they flow and how it all comes out. You'd be like, all this knowledge is exuding out of you. I appreciate you.
Well, I spent a good bit of time in the software space. Actually, I was in sales and marketing within the software space, but with actually 3 different companies over about 10 years time. So I've been through that development process. I know what it's like, to keep a list of bugs and fixes and enhancements, and deciding which enhancements get moved above the other ones, and also recognizing completely that sometimes there's an enhancement that seems really simple that's a lot more complicated than it seems on the surface. So I really do feel incredibly fortunate to have had them put in our path, because just like so many people like yourself and others in Owners Club, I really feel that it's all happening for a reason. And this is certainly not something I could do on my own, or Tigger and I on our own. And to have so many different ways to be able to really amplify our efforts, I'm very humbled and grateful for that.
That sounds awesome. Regan, let's say you're a newbie or a seasoned investor who wants to transition. You was in Airbnbs and you see, wow, this is not kind of working out. Or I'm a newbie and you pick someone's interest. How do I start and where do I start?
In midterm rentals?
Yes, and kind of what is it that you're doing? Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's like any new exit strategy. It certainly does take time to learn the ins and outs. And, kind of understanding, based on your geography, what are some of the drivers. I've really started to learn and take a lot of look at economic development, what's going on, things like that. And actually, ironically, I've been working on, as you may have as well, that really PACE is pushing us all to look at, what we're doing, how we're educating others. And I now have penciled in actually my first workshop that's going to be the weekend of January 25th that I'll be hosting in Southwest Michigan. So if anyone wants to do some actionable things where, you can go from, watching a lot of videos, learning things like that, but really sitting down for a few days and, getting into the work and doing things, I would say that's one opportunity. It's not, a full training program or a mentorship, but it's an opportunity to sit down and talk about a lot of these nitty gritty things like we were just talking about, but really, as somewhat of a think tank over the period of a couple of days and working with others. I'm going to be bringing in folks to talk about a lot of the different important aspects of the business. And then, actually, this is all like, I don't even have it published anywhere yet. But one thing I realize is really important for newbies is to get in the rooms, and we know this, with other people that have been doing it, that have the experience that they can partner up with. So I'm planning to piggyback a meetup at the end of the workshop. So it will be ending on that Sunday afternoon, January 26th. And so I'll have a meetup right at the end there. So maybe we'll have it at like 4:00 in the afternoon, something like that. That's a good time for a Sunday, so that then the newbies that have been at the workshop will be in the same room with more experienced investors, veteran folks, maybe some folks in Owners Club like ourselves that will be able to shake hands, maybe make some relationships, start some things that way. Because, as we all experience at our Owners Club retreats and the other things that we do, it's really when you sit down, eat with someone, have a meal together, kick around ideas, that you really start to come up with more tangible, actionable things that you can do, and go from being these, theoretical things that you're hearing about to things you're going to take action on. Because until you take action, like nothing else happens. You can listen to videos all day long, but you got to do something.
Regan, thank you for coming on. Do you have any social media handles that you want to people to know so they can connect with you before we get out?
Sure. On Instagram, it's Regan Sonnabend. That's really the primary place. I do have a YouTube channel that I'm getting going that hasn't made it as far yet, but that's one of my aspirations and things that I want to do better going forward. But I would say follow me primarily on Instagram. Certainly reach out if the workshop is of interest, and looking forward to continuing the conversation. I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's much appreciated. Thank you for connecting and accepting my offer to come on. So I appreciate you for coming on. And again, Regan, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.